Okay, Ny'la, I looked and I think you missed number 2, 4, and 7. So let me know if there's any others you need to do. Okay. On number 2, the secant of 2 pi over 3. Now we know that the secant is reciprocal of the cosine, and cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that means for secant we need to find a hypotenuse over adjacent that matches up with this. Okay. Now our 2 pi over 3, if you're having a little bit of trouble with radians, then just take 2 pi over 3 times 180 over pi and you get 120 degrees. So that means we're dealing with a 120 degree angle, which is a 60 degree reference angle. Okay, if you're good with radians, you know that all the way over is 1 pi. So 2 pi over 3 would be 1 pi over 3 short of that, and you can get your 6 degrees that way. So you might want to just change the degrees first. Now you know that's 60, you can lay out your triangle. Square root of 3, 1, and 2, and then make sure you have this side labeled negative. Then just simply set up a hypotenuse over adjacent, which would be 2 over negative 1, gives us negative 2. Okay. Now number 4, let me get situated here. All right, on number 4, we're doing an inverse tangent, so we're doing something different than we did on number 2, okay? We're doing an inverse tangent of negative pi over 3. So that means we need to find the angle that when we do the tangent of it, we get this answer. Now the first thing you got to do is you got to figure out where to draw your triangles, okay? So you got to remember that you're thinking like what the calculator would do here. What would the calculator do if we're doing a second inverse tangent or inverse sine? It would give us an answer in the first or the fourth quadrant. The first quadrant if they were positive, fourth quadrant if they were negative. If it was an inverse cosine, it would give us in the first and the second. It would use the second quadrant for negative and the first quadrant for positive. So we got to figure out where to draw our triangles. So we are doing an inverse tangent and it's a negative value. Let's go back over here. So we're doing an inverse tangent and it's a negative value. So we're going to have to draw our triangle in the fourth quadrant. So now the question becomes, so we have to draw our triangle to our angle down here. So now the question becomes, what is that angle? Okay. All right, so remember negative square root of 3 over 3. Okay, so we're doing a tangent, inverse tangent. So we got to think opposite over adjacent. So that means we're looking for an opposite of a square root of 3 and an adjacent of a 3. We don't really have to worry about the negative yet. Square root of 3 over 3. Well, that's got to be out of our 30, 60, 90 triangle. Okay, so we look at our 30, 60, 90 triangle and we start thinking, what are the opposite or adjacents? Well, from a 60, it would be square root of 3 over 1. That wasn't what we wanted. We wanted square root of 3 over 3. From the 30, it would be 1 over the square root of 3. That doesn't look real good right now until we rationalize it. Imagine multiplying by square root of 3 over square root of 3. There we go, square root of 3 over 3. That's what we want. Now, how does this negative come into play? That just tells us we need to be in the fourth quadrant. Let's go back over here. The tangent, inverse tangent, if it's a negative, has to be in the fourth quadrant. So that tells us where to put our 30 degree reference angle. Again, the 30 was the one that worked out to give us a square root of 3 over 3. So we're going to take our 30 degree reference angle, put it in the fourth quadrant. If we put it in the fourth quadrant, you know, what would the calculator say here? Would it say 30? If it did, we would put it in the first. So the calculator wouldn't say 30, it would say negative 30. Okay. Then you can change it to radians. I just always divide 180 by 30. That tells me what my denominator is. It's 6, so it's negative pi over 6. Or you can multiply, let's go back up here. You can multiply by pi over 180, not 180 over pi. Okay? But they are negative because that is a inverse tangent of a negative, has to be in the fourth quadrant. Then number 7, and maybe you set it up wrong. Find the area. It's a side angle side, so you use the 1/2 side times the sine of the angle that's between them. Our angle is between our two sides, so that's the formula we use. So type that in again. I think you got, let me look here. You got an answer of 12.7. So punch that in your calculator again, see if you can't get that to work, or see how take a look, see how you had it set up. Maybe you had things set up wrong. Okay, I'm gonna send this to your email. We'll see how this goes.